We are awaiting our Capitol Hill producer, Rebecca Kaplan. She's actually ready to talk to us. She was in the room there with House Speaker Paul Ryan listening to his remarks. So, Rebecca, just recap for us and our viewers what the problem is right now, what this intra-war party or this intra-party war is, the civil war, some are calling it, and does Speaker Ryan see a pathway out of it?
Well, the problem here is that you have two sides who, despite years of talking about this issue, are still very far apart. You have members of the House Freedom Caucus who've jumped into this debate over immigration and said there is no way they can accept anything that has a sort of special pathway to citizenship for these recipients of DACA. Meanwhile, you have moderates who are very eager to deal with this DACA issue, especially ahead of the midterm elections, since many of them have districts where this is very important to their constituents. So what we heard Speaker Ryan say just now, and this was coming out of this big 2-hour, what he called family meeting this morning about immigration, is that the next step is to start writing a bill. Now, what we heard from these moderates leaving the meeting is that they're willing to give the leadership a little bit more time as these negotiations continue. They're going to see what actually goes onto paper in a bill. But if not, they still say they have the signatures to start forcing votes on immigration bills coming up. The first votes would be on June 25th, but they need to lock those votes down by next Tuesday. So that may be the really big moment for us to find out what's next on this issue.
Has the president signaled when he wants to have this on his desk? I mean, he's sort of the wild card here, right? You can have all these family meetings, but you know, how, Rebecca, from what we know, how in line are is the family, so to speak, with what Mr. Trump wants?
I think what you have is moderates who don't necessarily share the president's vision, but Speaker Ryan has said he is still very committed to these principles that President Trump has laid out on immigration. The president hasn't given them a deadline, but I think we've seen him over the last several months try to apply a little bit of pressure on Twitter.
Right.
But really what got the situation going was these moderates saying, hey, we really need to take action on this issue. The White House, I wouldn't say, is an active participant in these talks so far as they aren't saying the bill must have this, this, and this, more than the president already has made this clear. But we did see Mark Short, who is the White House's liaison to the Capitol, in the meeting this morning, so they at least had a presence in this big family meeting.
Rebecca, you know, the president at one point said he wants a bill of love, and as to David's point, he's changed. I mean, it's been sort of topsy-turvy over the last couple of months. I wonder, though, does Mark Meadows, does the Freedom Caucus want a bill of love, or are they holding that hard line, saying no pathway to citizenship, in fact, even calling for some folks to be deported?
They're not necessarily saying that these young people can never, ever get citizenship. What they're saying is they don't want any sort of situation where they have a special pathway that is only available to DACA recipients. Now, the process normally would be that people, that perhaps they could get a green card and get some sort of legal status, but they would have to actually leave the United States in order to ultimately apply for citizenship. So what the Freedom Caucus members don't want to see, and we'll see how this plays out, is a situation where people who have DACA are just allowed to stay in the U.S. and get a sort of channel to citizenship that is only available to them. So
to my point, then, I guess I'm curious. Is it your sense from talking to some members, some of the more moderate members of Congress, that they could convince the president to go along with the moderates and some Democrats should they forge a path that doesn't include the Freedom Caucus? Because we all remember that one meeting where the president was sitting there with members of Congress and senators and seemingly willing to make a deal with Senator Dianne Feinstein before he had to be sort of pulled back from the precipice by Kevin McCarthy.
I think that's the issue for some of these moderates, is that the president has shifted on this issue in terms of what he said he will and will not accept. So that's been difficult for them to work with. But what I think we're going to see going forward is you have a number of Democrats who are willing to work with these moderates, but the leadership is not going to put something on the floor that doesn't get a majority of Republican votes. So right now, there do seem to still be enough Republicans in the conference up here who don't want to see anything happen with a special pathway to citizenship or with just a plain DREAM Act. So it's very unlikely we'll actually see that go to a vote.
Rebecca, who are the moderate Republicans that Trump listens to on this issue?
I don't necessarily think that he's having day-to-day phone conversations with the moderates. We know he is frequently talking to Mark Meadows, one of the chairmen of the House Freedom Caucus, but not a lot of those moderates are saying, hey, Trump called me up on my phone last night, 4 in the morning, and we had a conversation about immigration.
But is there a Republican who seems to have sort of connected with Trump on this issue, who seems to have his ear?
In the moderate camp, there does not seem to be. These members so far are kind of working with themselves, working with leadership. They are talking to the House Freedom Caucus. There was just a big meeting of more than a dozen members in Speaker Ryan's office yesterday afternoon. But so far, I wouldn't say that any of the moderates are in direct conversation with the president about what they want to do.
All right.
Rebecca Kaplan, thank you.
Thank you, Vlad and David.